Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's lesson, which is how to service a spindle. Now, I've made this jig up to make it very simple, so I don't have to go into a bathroom and with the cameraman to show you how to do this. So, the spindle is basically what is underneath this handle, and I will show you this very shortly. The first order of business, though, when you change anything, is to isolate the water supply. So, you do so by going outside to the front. You should have a water meter. Everyone does. You just turn it off. Turn it off. Make sure it's off by turning on the front tap closest to the water meter and releasing all of its pressure. Once it drains out, you know it's off. You're safe to continue to remove the spindle and service it. So now I'll proceed with servicing it. But before that, I've got a list of tools that you're going to need to do so. So on this whiteboard, I'll show you exactly what we need. Why stop doing it?
Yeah, I can see all that.
You
Yeah,
can?
very good. Very good.
You can see it all?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So as you can see, we're going to need pair of multi-grips, shifter, needle nose pliers, tube spanner, and a little screwdriver with 14mm socket. You're going to need a washer, an O-ring, and some lubricant. So now we shall proceed. So I've got this old school tapware. I've chosen this because this is what you're most likely to encounter in old homes. Remember these old ones, you've got this little button here. I'll show you. It pries off. So this little button is on the top of your handle. And inside, as you can see, there's a nut. Can you see that, Michael?
Yes, I can.
With that nut, you need a 14mm socket. Take the red off, so you can fit the socket in. Socket in. And the pops off. Here goes your nut and washer. Go on the handle. And here we have the flange that screws off. And now we're on to the spindle. Now when I do this, I usually make sure that the tap is open all the way. This is just a little nut that sits inside its handle. Like so. Now, you need the tube spanner to undo the spindle. So put the tube spanner over the spindle. Pair of multi-grips to crack the tube spanner, like so. Here comes the spindle. Okay, so now to the spindle, which is here. You need needle nose pliers to take the washer out. Usually you take the washer out like this because the seat on it is squashed. And so you need that to get right into the seat to pull it. And you pull out whatever residue is inside it. Now, to service the spindle is the shaft that sits inside its body here. To get the shaft off, you basically unwind the body from the shaft, like so. And here is the spindle. To service, you usually take off the O-ring, where you need a little screwdriver again. Pull off the O-ring, like that. There's the old one. You get a replacement O-ring and just slide it back on into its groove, like so. Now you get some tap lubricant. The lubricant is to make sure the O-ring does not dry out and crack and give you more maintenance issues. So you lubricate the O-ring like so. And also lube the thread. Not much, but enough. Just whatever's left on your finger. Now you place it back inside its housing. You do so by pushing it on and screwing. Finally, with the residue left of lube here on the base, I usually put it inside its hole where you put in the new washer, which is actually called a jumper valve. It's called a jumper valve because it sits in the body and jumps. And that's how you get water out. And if you lube the hole, it goes in there nicely and it doesn't bounce as much. Lastly, you put it back in. You get your tube spanner again. And you tighten it. Like that. You put the dress flange back on. With the handle, make sure the nut in the handle, not like that. Turn it off. Then you get the locking nut, which is here, put it back on. 14mm socket. And put its cap back on. And then you reinstate the water supply. You go out the front, you turn off the tap that you've been bleeding out the pressure, turn that off, make sure it's off, turn the water supply back on, come back in, check your work. If it's done successfully, this will not leak. Now, you service this when you see leaking from the spout. When this is leaking, when both taps are off, it means you need to service that spindle, doing exactly what I showed you how to do today. Now, if you have any questions, I'd love to hear them.
Yes,
please.
I've got a question. Anthony. What happens if you forget to put the O-ring on? Will it be really obvious when you've put it all back together?
It would be very obvious when you put it back inside its shaft, because you'll just naturally feel that it's not right if you've forgotten to put it back on. And if
you mean it
proceed yes, when you tighten it up. And if you proceed to turn the water supply back on, you'll just see it spew water from the shaft.
And what about if you don't lubricate it?
If I don't lubricate it,
yeah.
Well, look, if you don't lubricate it, it makes it tighter to turn off.
And so it might jump, is that right?
Easier to turn off.
Right.
And Anthony, if you don't lubricate it, did you say that it would then jump? Is that part of why it does? white jumps as well.
Yeah, if you don't lubricate the base, it can. And it's called
Yeah.
a jumper valve, and that's how you get water hammer. Because
Yeah. So how often
Yeah.
should you be changing it? I mean, if it's not leaking, you don't need to change it.
it's also relevant to how often you use the tap. If you use it quite frequently, then you're going to have to service it frequently.
Okay.
And you'll notice this, like I said, because you'll see it's evident because the water will be spewing out of the spout, even though it's off. It'd be hard to
Yeah.
turn it off as well. And sometimes it'd be leaking, like when you need to change the O-ring raise, it'd be leaking from the actual shaft here.
Right.
The handle.
That makes
One
sense.
question for me.
Yes, Michael.
What happens if you're still getting water leaking up through the tap once you pull the spindle out, you've turned everything off? How many taps do you have to turn outside, or you turn all the taps?
Well, basically, the closest tap to the water meter should usually solve that issue. But if not, you'll just have to keep working while the water is just spewing out. And you see how quickly you can do it. It's not that it's a job that takes a lot of time. So you could probably bear with the water. If it's hot water, scalding water, I'd turn the hot water supply off.
And what happens if, as does occur occasionally, you end up with air in the pipes and you start getting water spurting out after you turn the tap back on?
Oh, well, that's just because you've just turned mains pressure back on. And that's another way of just releasing the pressure, the air pressure out of its pipe. And that should resolve itself within seconds.
Excellent. And
I've got one question, Anthony. Sorry.
Yeah.
So it's probably a silly question, but in older taps where you've only got one tap handle that does both the hot and cold.
And
is
newer
it
tap
exactly
handles, you mean?
Oh, sorry, newer ones. Is it exactly the same? You don't need extra O-rings. You don't need, it's exactly the same principle. You're just doing, you go through the same process, because it's like with taps, you've got your old ones, you've got your cold, and then you've got your hot, but your new ones, you've got it kind of mixed in together. Is exactly the same.
Well, yeah, and I'll get into that in my next lesson.
Ah, cool.
Oh, good.
I'll show you
Okay.
exactly what to do with that.
Amazing.
Okay.
Okay.
Excellent. Well, that was very
Thank
clear.
you.
Thank you very much, Anthony.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have some feedback forms. If you'd like to fill them out, it'd be much appreciated.
Thank
Sure.
you.
Thank
Thank
you for your
you.
time.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.